Hi, Catherine.
Hey, Henry.
In discussions related to putting theory into practice, I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, so putting theories into practice is also known as praxis. So Praxis. Um, and this is a term that you hear a lot of in college. Um, I think about praxis a lot in terms of pedagogy because I was an instructor and I work with tutors on tutoring and teaching, um, and learning how to create tutoring pedagogy, which is like the process of teaching and helping others to learn. So when I'm thinking about putting theory into practice, I think a lot about, um, I think some of the guiding texts that have really shaped my philosophies on teaching. Um, and those are people like Paulo Freire, who talks a lot about wanting education to move away from what he calls a banking model and towards problem posing education, where students are thinking critically about their education and what they're learning and what they're being taught and why they're being taught these things. I think a lot about Bell Hooks, who writes about learning from her own personal experiences as a woman of color, and who talks about her experiences in education from a position of intersectionality, where she's thinking about who she is from many different angles, and how they all sort of work together. Um, and then I also think a lot about critical race theory, which tries to focus on race and how race shapes our journeys in education and the steps that we need to take in order to dismantle some of these forms of systemic racism. So in thinking of those three theories and in thinking of how you put that into practice, I think a lot of the pedagogical or the teaching work that I do is designed to help students build off of Bell Hooks, who uses her own personal experience in order to shape what she has to say about teaching and the approaches to academic work that she's chosen to take, because she believes that her experience and her community should be at the center of her academic work, so that she's speaking to real people, her family members, and so that it comes from her own lived experiences as a woman of color. It also relates to Paulo Freire in terms of my desire to help students understand that asking questions, being critical thinkers, has everything to do with what it means to learn. And part of my responsibility is helping tutors to learn how to take Paulo Freire's theories about what it means to ask critical questions, and to help them be able to translate that into developing their own questions when they're working face-to-face with students or in a virtual tutoring session. And then in thinking about critical race theory, this critical race theory focuses a lot on structural and systemic racism, or what we would call institutional racism. It really tries to expose how racism is built into the educational system and gives us the language and a process for thinking through how we can begin dismantling that system. And part of this, putting the theory into practice, is actually being able to draw on our own knowledge, our own lived experiences, and seeing that as a legitimate form of knowledge. So in working with tutors and working with students, when I put critical race theory into practice, I'm actually helping students and tutors realize that their own personal experiences and their lived knowledge, their experiential knowledge, is actually something that really is legitimate, that it contains a lot of wisdom that academia might not formally recognize, but which actually has the potential, because of all the wisdom and insight that it holds within it, to expose the racism that's built into the educational system, and to also offer us visions for how we can reimagine what education should be.
In short, if you're a student, actually, in fact, if you're anyone in any system, recognize that you are an asset, even when you are told that you might not be. An activity that I encourage you to seek out, inspired by this conversation, is think about what it means to ask valuable, meaningful, and insightful questions. And if you're not really sure where to start, you might use Google. If you're really motivated, you might look into some deeper resources. If you're a really overachiever, you might actually look up who Paulo Freire is and who Bell Hooks is, and read some of their work. And I imagine they also have other forms of media. So if you're not a book dude, if you're not a book gal, check out some of their work. We are in the Teaching and Learning Center at Foothill College. Please come find us if any of this interests you, and please come find us so that we can help you achieve your academic goals.